Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. I am Matt Welch, being joined by Devin Hassan and David Woolman. It is a little after 10:15 on a Monday, and gentlemen, we are back. Had a personal matter to attend to last week, hence why there was no episode. It was a bit of an eventful week for me. Wednesday I got my second vaccination shot, and then proceeded to be clubbed over the head by the side effects of said shot. Down and out with a fever to close out last week, but back and rearing and ready to go, guys. And we got a lot of catching up to do, because it is we are smack dab at the juncture in the high school sports schedule where there's just a lot going on right now. We've at least closed the book on a couple sports since we last spoke. Soccer's wrapped up, wrestling's wrapped up, but we still have softball playoffs beginning this week. Baseball's regular season is down to its final week, and then you've got track, you got golf, you got tennis. There's all sorts of fun stuff going on. So I'm just going to play a little bit of catch up, and starting over in, going to talk a little bit of stick and ball. I've not had a chance to really devote a whole lot of time to baseball and softball yet on the podcast. But yes, with the softball playoffs upon us, wanted to start off there, just quick hit some of the big things going on in our coverage area as the first round gets going later on this week. I guess we have games that start on Wednesday. That's why the earliest we have is Wednesday. Got Thursday, Friday. It's best of 3 series, so it'll be softball going on all week. So let's see. Let's start off with basically just going to lay it out for you guys. You can go with whatever direction you want with it. What is one thing that you're looking forward to most in the softball playoffs relative to your coverage areas? Devin, get us started, buddy.
I want to see, and it's been kind of a unique situation this year for me because I've had soccer for so long. Mm-hmm. And so I haven't gotten to see nearly the volume of baseball and softball games that you used to. They did tournaments, but they weren't as widespread. They weren't as big as they've been in years past. Yeah. And so, I feel like I blinked and all of a sudden the softball players were starting up. But I've kind of had my eye on Sachse all year long. Just because of the offensive numbers they've been putting up. Mm-hmm. They're 26-1. They're the co-district champions out of 9-6A. They shared that with Wiley. So 27 games, one of them was a forfeit. But in their 26 games, they've scored 9 or more runs in 20 of the 26. They got shut out just once, and that was against Wiley. Mm-hmm. But they've scored 2 runs or more in every other game, and that's against some solid competition. They've played non-district. They played Allen. They beat Prosper Rock Hill, who I believe won the district championship last week. A good Wiley. So they played some quality teams. Mm-hmm. But we've seen great pitchers carry teams to state titles. That dominant arm who you can, unlike baseball, who you can trot out there every game, every inning, and they've carried a team. I just want to see how far an offense like this can go in the playoffs. Not to say that they don't have pitching. I mean, Kayla Olthouse has done a nice job. She's got a 2.68 ERA in over 81 innings. Madison McClarity, who I'll talk about here in a second, has a 2.73 ERA in fewer innings. But again, that strength of the offense, they're hitting over 400 as a team. Again, not the strongest districts in the world, so there are some opportunities to kind of pad those numbers. But again, across the board, just what they've been able to do. We talked about Madison McClarity a couple of years ago. She's a junior on the radar of basically every Division I college program. She's hitting 706 this season. And she has 60 hits.
Those are Jada Coleman numbers.
Yeah, of her 60 hits, 24 doubles, 2 triples, 11 home runs. She has 71 RBIs. She scored 49 runs. If you pitch around her, put her on base, she stole 15 bases. So it's just, and it's not just that the fact that she's sitting there in the middle of that lineup. It's that everybody around her too. They've had a freshman, Nevaeh Watkins, who's come in and hit leadoff for them. She's hitting 587 with 47 runs and 3 home runs. Kelsey Flores is hitting 493 with 5 home runs. Nia Brown 443, 46 runs, 36 stolen bases. Kayla Olthouse over 400, 7 home runs. They've 7 of their regulars are hitting better than 400, and they all have some pop. I mean, they hit for average, they hit for power, they can run the bases. It's a fun team to watch, and it's just a little bit different because you see a lot in the playoffs. You see a lot of 2-1 games. You see some 1-0 games. And so I'm just really curious as we get into the heart. I mean, they're going to open up with either Horn or Tyler Legacy, they're having a play-in game tonight in Eustis. They'll be heavy favorites, I think, to take care of business in that game, just based on seeding alone, just having seen all four of those teams, or three of those teams, I should say, play. But as we get into the later rounds and they start matching up with some of those really, really top-notch pitchers, I'm just curious to see what Sachse can do in terms of a playoff run. Yeah,
I'm kind of curious because you check out the DFW Fast Pitch area poll, usually at the start of the week when they post it, just to kind of see just kind of get a sense of the regional landscape as far as kind of who the teams to beat in the area are. And the poll has been, for the most part, very, very Region 1 intensive. Yeah. You have the two Rockwall schools, Rockwall and Rockwall Heath, in there. I believe one's at 8, the other's at 10. So, yeah, I guess I've just kind of, Region 2's just kind of been off the radar as far as kind of where the strength lies, at least locally. So, yeah, maybe there is a chance for a team like Sachse to get hot and make a bit of a run until you get, later on in the postseason, you start running into some of those teams from a bit further down south. But yes, kind of to build off of that, and yes, with the Region 1, I'm just anxious to see how this is going to shake out, because I feel like if I'm just kind of thinking back at other sports throughout the year in Region 1, there's usually been like 2-3 teams you feel like, okay, one of them is going to emerge as the regional champion, and it just feels like that field is so widespread in softball locally, just because, like I said, at least going off the area top 10, the top 7 teams in the area, at least according to DFW Fast Pitch, all reside in Region 1, including several that are local for us. Number 1, Flower Mound. Number 2, Allen. Number 3, Prosper. Number 4, Denton Geyer. This is as of last week and whatnot. Number 7, Marcus. And it's kind of set up at least these first 3 rounds of the playoffs, or I guess maybe the first round and the third round, especially when you'll see those districts at 5-6A and 6-6A go head-to-head potentially. It's just set up a lot of scenarios where I'm just not really sure who to favor among this group. You had in District 5-6A a 3-way tie for the district championship. I've not covered a district that's resulted in like that in some time. You had Allen, Geyer, and Prosper all finishing at 10-2, and I'm not really sure how you could realistically power rank them, just based off, if you want to go off who's basically playing the best right now, it's probably Prosper, just they ran the table over the second half of district. But they've got a really, really tough draw just because of the way the seeding shook out. So they I guess they basically just did, a series of quick coin flips because everything got pushed to Saturday because of the weather and whatnot. So they quickly settled the seeding just via coin flips. The seeding for the postseason, you have Allen got the top seed, so they're 1. Geyer is 2. Prosper is 3. So that means Prosper draws the toughest of the potential 3 matchups over in 6-6A, and that means they get Marcus. So you get 2 teams ranked in the area's top 7 playing in the first round, and that should be an awesome series. Teams that are just loaded. With offensive talent, whether it's Prosper with Sidney Lewis, Gabby Coffey, Aiden Allen, lots of players that have been playing for Prosper since they were underclassmen. You have a Marcus offense that has really come in hot, with at least 8 runs scored in their final 4 district ball games. Hayden Sokolowski, Emma Adair, Tori Edwards, all swinging the bat very, very well during that stretch. That is certainly one of the better series in the area in the first round, Prosper versus Marcus. You've got other first-round matchups with Allen taking on Plano. A lot of familiarity there, obviously, given that those 2 schools shared a district for 20 years straight. You have Geyer going against Hebron. Boyd against Flower Mound. McKinney-Boyd was the 4 seed out of 5-6A. Flower Mound was the 1 seed. Flower Mound ran the table in 6-6A, and their pitching and defense is about as strong as anyone in the area right now. I think, let's see, I've got it down here. Their defense is allowing 1.3 runs since the start of March. Landry Harris has been nearly untouchable, their sophomore pitcher. She's an ERA of just above 0.5. And that's just kind of part and parcel with, some of these, between these 2 districts. Heck, you can argue that the pitching in 5-6A, their top 4 teams, like that might be, you find me a district that has a better top 4 pitching wise than with Allen, Alexis Telford, Geyer with Rancy Willis, Boyd with Kinsey Cackley, and then Prosper's duo of Abby Beasley and Alyssa Griffin. I believe every single one of those pitchers has an ERA of 1.8 or below. It's just goodness. And even in that 1-4 matchup with Flower Mound and Boyd, Flower Mound, as hot as they've been, you're going up against the state's preeminent strikeout artist in Kinsey Cackley, she only only pitched in district this year. She was recovering from an injury. She still managed to get over 200 strikeouts in 12 district games. She's averaging just a shade under 17 strikeouts per game. Just incredible stuff. So, I mean, and again, but that's the kind of thing that gives you a puncher's chance in any matchup. You talked about the ability of a pitcher to single-handedly swing the balance of a softball game. So, that Boyd-Flower Mound series, despite the disparity in records, that could be an interesting series. There's a lot to like about especially these first-round matchups. And then when you get deeper on in, because it stands to within reason that some of these teams might see each other in the third round of the playoffs and whatnot. But then when for anybody that gets to the regional tournament, you've got teams like the Keller schools with Timber Creek and Keller High, and then Weatherford is also area ranked. There's just it's to get out of this region, it's going to be an absolute friggin' minefield, and I don't know. I don't really feel like there's a head and shoulders favorite right now, which is a bit different from what we had seen up to this point so far. Let's see. So that is that is where I was leaning on what has piqued my interest. David, what about you, man? What is something in your coverage area that is really that you're really looking forward to as the softball playoffs get up and rolling?
You mentioned Jada Coleman.
Yes.
So I'm looking to see how the Colony is going to fare without Jada Coleman and J.C. Hamlin. Just Jada, who's over at OU, who's continuing what she does over there. All she did during her high school career is hit over 700 with 702 batting average. And,
I know, one of the most incredible careers in any athlete in any sport that we've covered.
And then she, Gatorade National Player of the Year for the 2019-2020 school year, and she led the Colony to the state title in 2017, state semifinalist in 2019, and Hamlin was along with that run as well too. And, she hit over 460, for her high school career. So, and she had a 991 fielding percentage. So, obviously you're going to see, how the next batch of the team's going to do without, but this is a Colony team, even without those two stars right there, they've really improved as this season has gone along. Early on in the year, it was kind of a struggle. They were just in the preseason 1-8-3. So and the big thing is it was a really young team, a team that didn't have they only had one district game last year. They were they only had one game that went 7 innings. So these players on the team right now, they had to gain experience on the fly this season. So, they've taken, the lumps early in the season and they translate into a great, district run, even though it's not the best of districts. They've really turned right the ship right there. They finished 9-4 in District 10-5A. And the thing that really impresses me about this team is just their offense. They can score a lot of runs. In 12 of the games, they've scored at least 8 runs in their games.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. So this is even when they played Rock Hill, it was a 12-11 game right there. Rock Hill team that won the district title. So, I mean, this is a team that, can light it up against anybody. Obviously, they're going to be challenged, by Frisco Heritage in the first round. It's a Heritage pitcher, Jensen Hall, the freshman. She allows only her ERA is 1.96. So that's going to be the challenge right there to see what they can do against her. But despite that youth and despite going tall right there, they do have some. It's not just one player on the team. It's everybody on that team can hit right there. And one particular player I'm kind of looking at is junior Olivia Wick. She was on that team that went to the state semifinals in 2019, and during that little run right there, when she was only a freshman, she put the pressure never faced her. She hit 406 during the postseason. So I mean, she's got that experience. Sydney Young, their sophomore pitcher, she can really hit as well too. I saw her in a game against Sherman. She hit a grand slam, and Caitlin Moeller, one of their young players as well too. She hit a home run in that game too. So there's no shortage of offense for the Lady Cougars. And the good thing about the thing for them is that they actually get 2 home games in this playoffs.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so Wednesday it's going to be at the Colony, Friday at Frisco Heritage, and then Saturday, if necessary, they'll be at the Colony.
So potentially 2 home games.
Potentially.
So then, moving over then to baseball to take a look at obviously the postseason is still a week off, but heading into the final week, still plenty at stake with respect to district championships, playoff berths, whatnot. So, yes, what is the most important thing happening in our coverage area? For another absolute statement, what is the most important thing happening in our coverage area in the final week of baseball? How about you, Devin?
I don't have an awful lot of drama in some of my districts in terms of, in 9-6A, for instance, Wiley's kind of run away with it. There's some nice drama in the middle of that pack as they kind of settle the rest of the field. But one race that's been intriguing all year long is the Frisco district, 9-5A, which seems to be across the board in every sport. Just the depth and the talent they have, in every sport over there. You actually got a little bit. It cleared up a little bit late last week, but it was basically a 5-team race. And heading into this week, you have Liberty and Wakeland tied for first at 14-3, and then you have a drop off. Not a big drop-off, but a 2-game drop-off to Lone Star at 12-5, Reedy at 11-5, and Heritage at 11-6. And it hasn't just been the fact that the standings have been tight all season long, is that these games have been tight for the most part. I mean, there is a lot of really good pitching in this district. There's been 84 games played in district, and 50 of them the teams have combined for 10 or less runs, and 16 of them are 5 or less. So you've gotten a lot of 3-2s, 1-0, and it's not hard to see why when you start looking at some of those pitchers. I mean, with Robert Fortenberry and Luke Robertson over at Wakeland, and Will Glatch and Chandler Benson over at Liberty, and Cole Hebel at Reedy, and Dominic Reed at Lone Star, and Andrew Hickey at Heritage. I mean, these guys are bona fide aces. And so it's going to come down to Tuesday. They're actually wrapping theirs up just like softball did, so they have some wiggle room later in this week if they want to try to do any kind of tiebreaker situations. But as far as the top spot, Wakeland swept Liberty in the head-to-head, so they would get the advantage if they beat Lebanon Trail, a team that certainly favored Lebanon Trail, a team at the bottom of the standings. But that was a 1-0 game the first time they played. So we get coming down, and then you have Reedy, Lone Star, and Heritage. They have different tiebreaker scenarios based on how it shakes out. Reedy's been an interesting case, and they've been kind of the X factor in this whole thing because they were quarantined. So they fell way behind, and they've had to play 6 games in 12 days. And got out to a good start, but they had to play Friday, and they lost 2-0. And then they turned around and had to play Wakeland on Saturday, and they lost 2-0. So they're still getting good pitching performances, but you wonder if anything, that just kind of the fatigue of playing so many games in a short period of time is starting to catch up with them because they have 2 more this week. They have to play on Tuesday, and then they have their final makeup game on Thursday against Memorial. But they're right there in the thick of it, and it wouldn't shock me at all to have additional games come in later this week to determine that those 3rd and 4th spots. But again, as we just saw in soccer, when you have a district that's deep and competitive every single night, it hardens you. It gets you ready for the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So, you look at that district, and we just, kind of mentioned it a little bit on softball. Every one of those 4 teams is going to be formidable in the first round. It doesn't matter what the seeding is. They're going to be a tough out for anybody. Good
move from one really, really crowded district race to another. District 6A has quite the. Yeah, we got some pretty fun circumstances boiling up for this final week. So heading into the final week of the regular season, of the 8 teams in this district, only 2 have clinched a spot in the playoffs. Nobody has locked down their playoff seeds. So there's still fluctuation all over the board. And of the 8 teams in the district, 7 of them are still alive in playoff contention. What a freaking district. As of right now, the standings heading into this final week, you have Marcus in first place at 10-2, Coppell in second place at 9-3, Flower Mound in third at 7-5, and then you have a tie for 4th between Plano West and Plano, 6-6, and then a tie for 6th between Hebron and Plano East at 5-7. All 4 series this week are massive in terms of their implications to figuring out what the final order is going to be. You have Marcus taking on Plano East, Coppell taking on Flower Mound, Hebron taking on Lewisville, and Plano taking on Plano West. I mean, just you look right at the top. Obviously, Marcus still has plenty of incentive to try and hold off Coppell for that top seed. Just like that, though, Coppell still with it just 1 game back. They have plenty to play for if they can sweep Flower Mound, and then Marcus gets tripped up by East. You could get Coppell leapfrogging leapfrogging them, getting the top spot, winning a district championship. Flower Mound, though, could potentially overtake Coppell for the second seed if they get a sweep. Obviously, Plano West, they play each other head-to-head, and they're both tied for fourth place. So that could go one of two ways. Or, heck, maybe they cannibalize each other, split, and then Hebron or East leapfrogs them. There's just a lot going on for this final week. The one team of that mix, though, that does kind of have my attention is Hebron, because the one team that I did not mention in those standings is Lewisville. Lewisville is bringing up the rear at 0-12 in the district, and because of the way that the district schedule was set up with everyone doing the home and home series. So it just made it kind of tough all year to really kind of discern, okay, well, who really is good versus who maybe had a tougher schedule at the start versus not so much at the end. But you're kind of seeing now at the end, though, with this with Hebron, they were at one point, they were 3-7 in district heading into last week's games, and then they got a massive shot in the arm by just throttling Plano West by a combined score of 19-0 in just 2 games. And they play again Lewisville, a Lewisville team that, despite the winless district record, they've been, they've at least shown down the stretch that they could at least put a little bit of a scare. They played Coppell pretty close in their matchup, and they've shown at least moments of competitiveness. And obviously, they'll have plenty to play for just from a pride standpoint. Nobody wants to go 0-14 in the district, but that could potentially put Hebron in position to finish at 7-7, and then the pressure is on Plano West, one of them to try to sweep, because especially if you're West, obviously you lose the head-to-head with Hebron after last week. So, it just puts there's just a lot riding on this week. I would say also brace for the chances of a seeding game in any of these scenarios, because there have been 9 home-and-home series between the top 7 teams in this district, 9 series that have resulted in a 1-1 split. There are not many sweeps, which is evidence when you see how close everybody is in the standings. Been a very, very hotly contested baseball district. So, Marcus and Coppell, you're good as far as getting into the playoffs. Still don't know what seeds you're going to be, but those other 5 teams for those last 2 spots, it's going to be a fun little fight to the finish over in 6XA baseball. Let's see, David, how about you, man? Round us out, at least talking baseball. What is something on your radar that is quite important going down this week?
Well, I'm moving to District 6-5A, and this is Lake Dallas. Mm-hmm. Right now, they're currently tied with have the same record as Northwest. They're both 7-5 in district play, but Lake Dallas has beaten them twice this year. So technically, they're third right now. Yeah. But in this district, great. This is nobody's won the district title yet, and they still got 3 playoff seeds, to be decided between 4 teams right there. Grapevine, they've clinched a playoff spot. They're 9-3 in district right there. But the next 3 teams, they still got a lot to fight for. Birdville's 8-4. They're in second place right now. Then you have Lake Dallas and Northwest, who both have 7-5 records. And then just right behind them in 5th place is Colleyville Heritage, a tradition-rich Colleyville Heritage. They're 6-6 right now in district play. And anything could happen this week. Lake Dallas, they've got a pretty favorable matchup right there. I really like their chances heading into this week. They play Richland, which is in last place at 3-9. So if Lake Dallas can come up with a sweep, they're in the playoffs. That's going to be huge right there. It's a Lake Dallas team. They had to split with Denton Ryan last week. The first one didn't go as well as they wanted to, but they rebounded on Saturday, which is a makeup game because there was a rainout on Friday. So, it'll be good, to see what they can do this week against Richland and possibly go in the playoffs. It'll be good for Chris Haney, who's only in his second year as head coach right there. And, he took over a pretty important spot for Ryan Howard, who's now at Coppell right there. And Howard led him on that, long playoff run a couple years ago. So, obviously, Lake Dallas, it's going to be a different Lake Dallas team, but it's one that, we could see what it can do, because based on that experience that they have going far in the postseason, it'll be interesting to see what they can do.
Let's see then. Let's kick around some notes on some of do we call these solo sports, or what's the proper framework for the non, I guess the wrestlings and the tracks, the more individual sports and whatnot. But like I said, obviously beyond baseball, softball, beyond those standings based sports that we have going on, it is postseason time for for a lot of other sports, especially wrestling, which had its season delayed all the way into the spring. You've got track, which is down to its state meet coming up in let's see, in a little under 2 weeks. Golf just wrapped up, so golf didn't just wrap up; they wrapped up the regionals, I should say. So let's see. So let's just some notes from our coverage area as far as something of note that has gone on locally with one of these non standings based sports. Devin, what is something that has caught your eye in that respect?
Track. Kendrick Smallwood over at Poteet.
You put on quite a show on Saturday.
Yeah, you got to see it firsthand. But this was this guy I saw as a freshman a couple of years ago, and he advanced to state as a freshman in the 110 hurdles. And you see underclassmen make an immediate impact in track and field, but a lot of times it's in the distance events, it's in the relays. You don't really see that as much in the hurdles because that combination of size and speed, and you got to have the strength to get over those hurdles. And you don't see a lot of underclassmen that have developed physically well enough to compete at the highest level. But he took fifth back 2 years ago, ran a 14:27. Obviously, last year there was no running, so he didn't get a chance to build off that performance. But he's come back this year. He's been strong all year. He's been winning basically every beat he's competed in, and he was pretty dominant on Saturday. I mean, I mentioned he ran a 14:27 2 years ago. Well, 13:99 won. Well, he ran a 13:56.
Yeah.
And obviously conditions are always different. You can't compare 1 year to the next. And I know he got pushed for most of that race, and I guess one of the other runners tripped late.
There was a McKinney North hurdler that on the very last hurdle.
Yeah. So, but when you look at the results, he was a second faster than the runner-up. And half a second faster than the 6A Region 1 winner.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a personal record. He broke the Region 2 record that was set by, obviously, Robert Griffin III several years ago. He even got a shout-out from RG3 on Twitter.
Did he? That's awesome.
Yeah. Someone had tagged RG3, and he said, he said, keep it going, proud of you, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have any idea if they know each other. They probably have crossed paths down the way because RG3 does stay very involved with, with Texas high school sports. But, on top of that, then he comes back in the 300 hurdles, runs at 36:81, nearly 2 seconds faster than the field. Again, more than a second faster than the 6A Region 1 winner. The winning time 2 years ago was 37:35. So he's right there on a state championship level pace. We'll see what happens. He's kind of been building up to this. I know talking to even back as early as football season, talking about to some of the Poteet coaches is having that. We talk about soccer. They got most of their season in last year, and then had it kind of ripped away. Well, a lot of these people that we're talking about right now in golf and tennis and track didn't have any season at all. So they've been itching to get back, and they've used that as motivation to stay hungry. During that off time, not knowing when they're going to have a chance to compete again. And I think you're seeing the effects of who's really kept that same work ethic, that kept that same motivation, and real interest to see what Kendrick Smallwood does here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, there were some just going back through some of the pictures that I took. There were photos of Kendrick when he crossed the finish line and the other hurdlers still hadn't cleared their final hurdle. I mean, that's just he was pound for pound as impressive an athlete as there was at that regional showcase on Saturday out in Arlington. From my note, despite spending 12 hours covering track on Saturday, I actually did not have something from the regionals to talk about. I was actually going to veer to the wrestling mats because they wrapped up their state tournament down in Cyprus this past weekend, and it doesn't take long when we start talking wrestling before the name Allen comes up. And Allen, heading into this one, though, I'd say, all right, so the intrigue for me, actually, it wasn't even so much heading into state, but heading into regionals the week prior. Would you believe it if I told you that Allen was not ranked number 1 in the state in Class 6A? Because they weren't. There was 1 point separating them, and whatever the algorithm that Wrestling Texas uses to assemble its Class 6A rankings, there was 1 point separating Allen from Arlington Martin in the 6A rankings. So Martin, by the slimmest of margins, was number 1 to Allen's number 2. Allen ended up advancing 10 wrestlers to state. Martin ended up advancing 9. So you're setting up for what should be a pretty competitive state meet between those two. And just the way that it shook out in the final standings, Allen, who, if you don't know, they entered the state tournament, the 11-time defending state champions. pound for pound as dominant a program as there is in Texas. And the result was the closest finish of any of the state meets during Allen's their decade plus reign of dominance in UIL wrestling. There were only 18 points in the standings separating Allen and Arlington Martin, but the bottom line did not change. Allen extended its run to 12 years in a row. And they weren't alone, and that was probably maybe even a bigger takeaway from this is that Allen not only won the state title on the boys' side, the girls did it as well. The girls won their first ever state championship. So, great news for the rest of Texas, as Allen's girls wrestling program has all of a sudden developed to a level now where they are winning state championships. In total, Allen had five individuals win state titles. Braxton Brown, he became just the fourth wrestler on the boys' side in UIL history to go 4 for 4. He's won state every year from freshman through senior year. Then you had Joe Leszewski, a freshman who won state. Cade Moore won state as well. On the girls' side, Jasmine Robinson, a freshman, she won a state championship. And Eliana Martinez won state as well. It's impressive for the girls because the girls didn't win their district meet, but they were able to get the wins at regionals and then state. And it just kind of shows, it's just kind of the way that these more individual sports work out, whereas you can have the more balanced team, the more well-rounded team at the district level, but as you get further and further into the postseason, that's when your top-shelf talent really begins to separate from the pack, and that's what you saw here with Allen, as they had 4 girls that ended up placing in the top 4 at state, and a lot of years, that's all you need. So they were able to win their first ever state title. Allen continues its dynasty now at 12 in a row, and Allen wrestling one step closer to world domination. Just impressive stuff to see. So let's see, David, you can close up shop here, and what is something in the solo sports world that has piqued your interest of late?
Well, I'm going to round it out. Devin covered track. You covered wrestling. I'm going to talk a little golf right here.
There you go. This is the most versatile episode of the podcast that we've had in some time. There you go.
Well, I'm going to stick to the Region 168 tournament.
You were busy last week covering golf.
Yeah. I went all the way down to Grand Prairie, like way south Grand Prairie. I don't know if it was might have been on the edge of some other county. I don't know where it was.
Warrior territory.
Yeah, pretty much right there. So, the big thing on the girls' side is we wanted to see how Hebron and Coppell were going to play out right there. Both of those teams have kind of been back and forth all year. You go to the district tournament, and then Hebron just ran away with that tournament right there. They led by 13 strokes after the first day. Then they defeated Coppell by 24 strokes. But the good news for Coppell is, despite losing by that many strokes, they still advanced to the regional tournament right there.
You got out.
So that's the main thing that they wanted to accomplish. So heading into the regional tournament, Coppell's head coach, Jan Borick, she wanted to kind of see her team perform a little bit better on the first day of that tournament right there. Trailing by 13 strokes on the first day is not an ideal situation right there.
Especially against a high-level team like Hebron. That's a really tough deficit to make.
Exactly. But I think she said a little bit going into with that district tournament right there is maybe a little bit of rust from the spring break because they were on spring break that week. So maybe that might have contributed to a little bit. But all of a sudden they come around last week and even though they're trailing after day one, it's only by 1 stroke to Hebron. So much better position right there. So Coppell they ride the momentum of that, and all of a sudden they get a little bit of a challenge by South Lake Carroll on the second day, and they won by 8 strokes. So Region 1 champions heading into state with a lot of confidence right there, and this is a team that if they can perform like that, they can do very, very well at the state tournament. They're 2 seniors, Chelsea Ramos and Jamie Walsh, who's been leading that team all year. They had another fabulous tournament. They actually tied for 3rd, and then they had to go to a playoff to decide that right there, because that's the way the UIL does it with these tournaments right there. So Chelsea Ramos, who's going to Texas Tech, she had 72 the first day, 76 the first day, and then Jamie Walsh, who's going to Oklahoma City University, she gets 73 the first day, 75 the first day. So there you go, right there. And then a couple of their underclassmen, Mia Gabbro and Lauren Rios, they both did place in the top top 20 as well, too. Mia, she shot 76, 78. Lauren, 80, 76 right there. Can't ask anything better from your top 4 scorers right there.
Nope.
But, Coppell's a regional champion. But also the good news is for Hebron, they're going to the state tournament as well, too. So can't complain about that.
There you go. And that is a look at some happenings in baseball, some happenings in softball, and then batting around some thoughts on track, wrestling, and golf. And that will do it for this episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. Be back next week to pick up where we left off, probably recap that first round of the softball playoffs and set the stage for some baseball postseason as well. Until then, folks, you take care, and we will talk to y'all later.